It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody here today. We got Chad Jutner with us.
Hey, guys.
Peter Lawrence.
Hi there.
And from our Learning Lab community, one of our many communities, we have Adam Johnson and Rusty Stainbrook, who lead that community. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we're going to talk about consulting, specifically what besides our core skill sets, the work we do we do as consultants. So Rusty, you guys did a learning lab a few weeks back. Can you actually just set up like what the learning lab is and what you guys do?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, Kyle. So the learning lab, Adam and I had this vision a while back. It used to be the consulting co-op group, but we kind of felt like that had run its course. And so we had talked about this idea that we wanted to set something up where you would have a little homework and you would come to it and we could have discussions around what we learned. So it's what we do each time is we pick, so far it's been Udemy. I think our next ones are going to be more Udemy courses. Everyone gets to kind of come in and take the course, learn, and then we come in, just have a discussion about what it is that we learned, how it could be practical to consulting, or about how we've had experiences in the past where, you know, we've kind of proved out some of the tactics work. So our last course that we went through, we're all on kind of the soft skills, and then, you know, those skills are kind of hard to quantify, and I think we aren't really trained in a lot of these things. So you're kind of expected to know how to communicate. You're expected to know how to handle high pressure situations, but you know, most of us were technologists. We come in knowing how to solve technical problems, and whether or not you can handle having relationships with other humans is another story. So we thought it would be worth having discussions on you know, some tactics on how to, you know, behave like an adult, and I think the courses went pretty well.
I think, to be fair, we do a little bit of filtering on adult behavior and ability to talk to humans during the interview process. But yeah, you're right. It's a lot about your technical skills too.
Yeah, I think that's the main reason we're there. But as part of that, it's the stuff, just working as a team and things like that. There's that skill set, and that's kind of everywhere. But as a consultant, what's on top of that?
Nothing. That's it. That's just
all,
that.
Just be, well, I kind of boiled it down to, just be cool to work with. That's kind of one skill set, is kind of keeping your cool. Because we are in tough situations, and sometimes we're brought in because they're in a tough situation and they need our help. So that's kind of one way we engage. We engage as project teams working on specific projects. We engage, many different ways for our clients. And so knowing how to join a team midstream and knowing how to get caught up quickly, knowing how to keep your skills up to date. We do a lot of that stuff outside of our normal work week. That was kind of one of my surprises was, I really need to know my stuff. I really need to get in, dig into this, and it's going to take me some work outside of my normal 40 hours a week to get into that stuff.
Well, and I think following on Rusty's intro is like, yeah, there are a lot of soft skills that some people are born with, some people develop, and some people never seem to quite grasp. Those folks that don't grasp it, not necessarily folks that we work with, but those soft skills, they come around probably through a couple of different ways, right? thrown into a horrible situation or a tough situation. I don't want to say horrible, but challenging. Like you've been put on the spot. You've been, you've done something wrong, and somebody's really mad or something like that, and you have to call your CM and say, "Hey, how can I fix this and make it better?" And Adam, you guys were going through and doing a bunch of parts of a class, right? Or a bunch of a Udemy course.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the last one, but there were a couple of them that I was able to attend, and you get those nuggets out of them, and it really helps out.
Yeah, the last one being on teamwork and how we're always working with different teams and joining new companies, or when we change gigs, we're coming in. We're oftentimes obviously the outsider and trying to learn a lot quickly. And how can one tactic that I've been doing is you get some of the individuals on a one-on-one call and just start to get to know them outside of kind of the actual work, right? Get to know them a little more on a personal level, because then you kind of can gauge like different conversations and how maybe they say something. It's like, yeah, I understand that a little more now because I understand some different things that are going on with your at work, or maybe even personal, right? Because we all try to keep our personal lives kind of out of work, but at times, like, you might have had a frustrating morning and you share something or you hear something, you maybe get feedback from somebody, and you're like, okay, cool, like, totally get it, and let's try to filter that out and continue the conversation and try and steer it in back to a little more just back to the work, and try not to get bogged down by some of that personal stuff. So
yeah, like sometimes you get into 2 car accidents in a real short time period, and neither one of them's your fault. And Chad, maybe Chad, you can help me out with that. Do you try to take that to work? Do you try to leave it at home? Do you blame somebody if they bring it to work a little bit?
Thanks for reminding me, Peter. So for background, I was involved in a hit and run accident first week of January. It took about, a month and a half to get my truck back. It was not great. And then, so I finally get my truck back. And here's the thing, I love my truck. It's 11 years old. I love it.
Your forever truck, right?
Forever truck. I take meticulous care of it. Get it back on Monday. And then on Wednesday, on my way to class, I slid on the ice and somebody T-boned me. So, do I bring that to work? Not really. I mean, it sucked, but I sometimes think I'm relatively okay at compartmentalizing, various situations. And I'm sure if I had a therapist, they would say that is incredibly unhealthy. It seems to work for me so far. Don't recommend it, guys.
No.
I am intimately familiar with the accident reporting tools from Progressive.
Nice.
And my gosh, a workflow that you can only move forward in that takes you a half hour to fill out is not the best. I hope Progressive never becomes a client, or I hope they do. I have a lot of suggestions. I unfortunately have a lot of input into how to.
Chet has feedback.
Yeah.
So we talk about compartmentalizing. Rusty, any other little hints and tricks to kind of make it a smoother experience?
Well, I think, so Chad, I think you're probably doing it right. I actually don't know how you're doing that, because there's a lot of frustration there, and that's going to bleed over into other parts of your life. But ideally, we want to have relationships with the people we worked with in a professional manner, and you try to leave that stuff at home. Um, that the story about how it's your forever truck, I'm sure that was devastating when you got T-boned. So that's going to be, probably a cloud at least for a few days after that. But for tips and tricks for that, I don't actually have much there, Peter, because I don't know that you can prepare for a circumstance like that. Some of the smaller things that you might deal with on a more regular basis. I think there's certainly some tactics that you can use. We actually covered this in our very first class that we had together, and we had talked about like journaling, kind of writing down a lot of the things that you have these pent up emotions, thoughts, write them all down, and then when you come in, hopefully you can clear your mind for some of those things, and then really kind of spend some time, frame what it is that you're trying to do, understand the problems, and then try to leave the other problems at the I guess metaphorical doorstep, since we work remotely these days. But yeah, that's what I have. Any thoughts on that, Adam?
Not much more to add. Yeah, the compartmentalizing thing is it's definitely it can be difficult, and I think you don't always know. I'll say for myself, like I don't it might be after, like, join a meeting and you're just hearing just the framing of others on the call, what they're saying. You're just like, it's just kind of getting at you a little bit, and you don't realize it. But I think I'll say I 100% try to steer clear of bringing any more emotion in that's has nothing to do with, really outside of work. And then also, as I said earlier, like filtering, taking what you're hearing from others, with the understanding of like if it is something that's new, it's like, oh, I understand there might be something going on, and so you just take that and make sure you're not just taking the words for words directly, right? It's because it's especially in this remote climate, it's even harder to, if someone doesn't have their camera on.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to read a room, and so those one-on-ones are actually, I seem to, well, people are always more willing to have their camera on when it's two people on a call, and I start with my camera on, so that's something that I think works well.
Kyle, you're quiet.
This kind of made me, I was kind of getting my thoughts together. It kind of made me think of kind of the reverse of that, where, there's personal stuff going on with the people you're working with, or even, political situations where, someone might kind of drag you into it and come and talk to you about it. And I had a trick I would use is the response was a question about something I was working on. Hey, did you hear about this? This is happening. And it's like, yeah, hey, I was working on this, this page, and I'm wondering, like, I'm having problems with the layout. So, what do you think about this? And you just kind of shift the conversation away from it. It's just easier to do that than to be confrontational. And after a while, I think people will get the idea that, you're keeping it about work, and you can, make sure you keep your personal stuff about work. But as you get to know people, the longer you're there,
doesn't it?
It gets harder and harder
Yes.
not to kind of be, and you do make friends at your customer site, and you do, hang out outside of work and kind of let your hair down a little bit. And that can strengthen your connections with people. You're also kind of working on the project you're working on kind of informally, and you're going to hear some stuff maybe maybe some work gets done there too. So
I think sometimes one thing I try to do, I don't know if I'm successful or not, but I don't necessarily avoid those conversations, and sometimes I bring them up. And sometimes situations happen that are hard to ignore and hard not to talk about, regardless of where you are, right? Like if I'm at work, if I'm at home, the situation in Minneapolis in January, it almost seems like a political statement to not talk about it, like it's a privilege that we all probably get to have that, hey, we can just ignore it. It doesn't affect us, which is a statement. But then, understanding that even when there's differences, like the ability to empathize with people going through it harder or not at all, or right, like we have coworkers that were more impacted by this than others.
Right.
I have a daughter that doesn't look like us, right? She's a Chinese girl and she has a job, and she was terrified for 6 weeks. Still is a little bit. And so like, I talked earlier about compartmentalizing that stuff. I think Rusty or Adam, like there is a point where there's a breaking point, right? And you're just like,
Compartment's only so big.
Yeah. And I'm known, like to Kyle's point, like we become friends with the people we work with, but you're at work for 8 hours, 9-10 hours a day. This is like 1/3 of your life, right? You spend 1/3 at work, 1/3 sleeping, and 1/3
watching the Twins.
Watching the Twins if you can, yeah. And to just not be authentic for 1/3 of your life, or half of your conscious life is unhealthy.
Yeah.
I think there's a fine line there too, because when you come into a new team, you need to build trust. And one of the best ways to build trust is to get to know people. And getting to know somebody is more than just surface level work, right? It's like whether, depending on who you're talking to, they might feel more comfortable sharing certain things in their lives. But there's more than just the work stuff to build those relationships. And where's the line? Where do you keep it professional? And I think the relationship, depending on what the relationship is, it's different each time. But it's hard because we do want to build that trust. You do want to be, you're coming into these teams sometimes, expected to be kind of an expert in the field, and for people to trust you, you need to build those relationships. They have to know why they're going to believe you, and a lot of the times it's more than just the technical skills. They have to like you as well.
Yeah, and I was talking more about like just the office politics, avoiding that stuff because it's kind of a negative thing. But you got to be human and you got to be authentic and make those connections with people. And one of the ways I think early on is in a meeting, if you don't know something, just saying, I don't know that, it's like admitting that you don't know everything and that sometimes you have to do some research. I'm not sure if it works that way. Let me dig into that and I'll let you know. And that's being authentic. When I started out as a consultant, I had a really hard time. And when you're doing low code, it's like you're kind of in a box. So there's a lot of times where you actually have to say, it doesn't work the way you want it to.
Yes.
Delivering bad news.
And that was always hard for me. I always wanted to find a workaround. And it's always something kludgy. And, it's like, or could you do it this way? That takes 20 steps instead of the 2 steps you want to do. But just being authentic with it and being honest about what's happening is going to serve you way better than trying to be perfect. And because it's kind of phony. You just don't want to be that way.
Yeah, because we're not robots and we're not AI, right? We don't have all the answers, even if they're wrong. we're willing to say that we don't know, not make up some unrelated facts that we can deliver with the phrasing of, like an AI or a robot, and just say, no, the sky is green. I've gone out and looked, and today it's green.
And I think part of that connection is letting them get to know you, because they want to get to know you as well. So it's, being willing to share some things. Hey, what do you like to do when you're not here? Nothing. You watch television. Oh. So.
Yeah, icebreakers. These are they definitely can help kind of tease some of that out of people. So.
What's your favorite icebreaker, Adam?
Oh, I mean, I like to just ask people what they enjoy doing in the summer. I mean, I'm probably, that's not real loud, probably super creative. If my wife were here, she'd have probably a notebook full of them. I'm not as creative.
I have two. I either ask people, have you ever been to prison?
Okay, here we go.
And then, have you ever been in a fist fight? And you get surprising answers for both questions. Like one dude, I asked that question, he goes, prison or jail? And I'm like, all right, let's go. We've got a story to tell. And then I actually, one of our new coworkers, I asked her the question about a fist fight, Ms. Goodman. And she told this wonderful story about how she was going to fight somebody in middle school or something, and then they decided to not do it. But like, it was great. Like, I learned more about her in, I don't know, 5 minutes there than I think I have from any introduction we do, or like glancing at their LinkedIn profile, whatever, right?
Favorite movie or anything like that. That's not going to tell you about a middle school fist fight that was avoided.
Yeah. Or what it was about. I found out what it was about, I think, and yeah, it was great. Really cool.
I like gadgets and asking people about, like, hey, have you guys seen these new things? Have you seen this Instant Pot?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That was Adam. He asked me that when I met him.
Yeah, the best carnitas.
Yeah, right? And I bought one immediately on Amazon.
Pretty much our first time sitting down in the conference room.
Yep.
Kyle ordered his Instant Pot.
I had one on the way before he finished.
Yes.
The word Instant Pot. It was
yeah.
He said carnitas. I was sold. Yeah, I think, kind of finding a shared interest, some common ground, that all helps. So there's other things that we deal with that wasn't really the case as a full-time employee. Kind of walking into a tough situation and knowing how to avoid certain landmines. And one I learned was not criticizing the stuff that we're going away from. We went with this platform, but now we're going to move over here. And it's like, well, why did you go with that one? That's, it's like you're talking to the person that made the decision, and it's not really good to tell them that you think Goldmine sucks, and then you get yelled at, which is a true story. So that's when I learned. It's like, oh, okay, everybody makes their best decision they can at the time, and they have, people have their own regrets about some things that, I could have done that better. So you don't want to pile onto that. So just, knowing kind of certain things to avoid, knowing that you're different than they are. You're there to do the work, and you're brought in. You're not a full-time employee. And so you kind of don't have the same set of rules they do, or the same events that you might not be invited to, things like that.
That's one of the hard ones for me is, hey, we're having an all-company meeting. I don't know what you're going to be doing for the next hour, but it's not that. You're going to we're going to go learn about stuff that's super important to the company. You don't get to go. We might tell you about it. We might not, depending on what the news is. That's been a frustration for me in the past.
That's right. I think some of those relationships, it does
Yeah.
help to have, like, cultivating some of those like deeper relationships. And it just they're probably more willing to share like news that are coming out of particular meeting. Oftentimes I'll be invited to some meetings, but not others, and it's always like, like what, why? And then if you hear bits and pieces of the meeting after the fact, and it's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like and oftentimes I got an hour, a nice, quiet, like perfect hour of work done. Right,
Yeah.
I can concentrate and you don't get those as much when it's a meeting. I didn't have a meeting, which is nice, and I can focus.
Yeah, some things like are kind of weird scenarios that you have to figure out how you're going to navigate. I had a situation where I was, we had a company, they built this for us, and we want you to come in and fix this. We don't want you to ask anything about the project or why it's like that. We just want you to come in and fix this. Can you do that? And it's like, yeah. So no questions asked, just go in, do the work. I've also had situations where, okay, you're going to work with me and I'm going to work with everybody else, but you can only work with me. So I've had that situation, like, okay, that's weird. And you're going to be filtering both ways. It's kind of the telephone game. And, I always like kind of having that connection and being in the room because, all the projects I worked on were, solo gigs. And so I'm playing all the roles. I'm playing the BA and the developer. So that can be tricky as well. So that's one thing as a consultant is sometimes you have to stretch into areas that you might not be comfortable with. I was asked to do a lot of systems licensing, cloud licensing research, and system stuff that like I don't really do. And we don't have anybody else. And it's like, okay, I will do my best, but I will take a crack at it.
Right.
Have you guys had that scenario happen?
Not in licensing, but I've certainly had to take a crack at a few things where there's nobody on site that's aware of how to do this thing, or we're starting up this relationship with this partner, and we need you to make the API work, even though it's not supposed to work with our particular type of code, but we need it to work somehow. Just make it happen. And so you do.
I had a client that as part of the interview process, they had asked if I had ever taught anybody or mentored anybody before. And so the answer was yes, I have. And the interview went well. And then after I landed at the client, it was made clear to me that part of my role would be to take two senior engineers that had never done Java before and teach them Java. And so that was it was quite the experience. I ended up having to kind of fire up. It was two on one because I had two devs, and so we would have regular meetings where I was basically running a Java 101 course, and the previous language that they were on was not object oriented, so they had very few parallels, and so I thought it would be easier. But when I'm explaining certain things, they had no mental model for how it worked and what they were working on. And it was a challenge. That was certainly not something that I had anticipated, as coming on. So I did one term as an adjunct professor.
Yeah, that nowhere in your resume had adjunct professor ever appeared, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that we as consultants get asked to stretch a little bit out of our comfort zones. Sometimes before we get to the client, sometimes after we get to the client, right? Like client will ask you to like, hey, can you help this person? They're really struggling. Well, I guess, but is that is that really where you want to spend your consulting dollars? Is maybe a tutor down at the local college would be better. But you're there and you're there to help, and if you have to teach them Java, then that's what you do, right?
Yeah. I've had countless scenarios where I was brought into, like, all of a sudden I'm on the desktop like migration team
Yeah.
because it's the weird this weird transition to on-prem to the cloud had a lot of things that were kind of funky that you had to figure out and tricks to make them work. And I have a background in tech support and things like that, so all of a sudden I'm troubleshooting, being asked to evaluate somebody that I'm working with by a person in leadership.
Well,
What do
that's
you think of
another
this
challenge.
person? That was the most uncomfortable thing, I think, in that moment. Yeah, because I was not prepared for that.
Adam, do you ever get asked for feedback on people that you work with? And like, so tell me the truth. Does this person know this thing that we're doing, right?
Yeah. It does come up. I know a couple of clients back, like there was a lot of more pointed questions trying to understand. And I think what I try to you can try to point at PR comments that you're making, more open, like trying to use the PR as maybe more of a teaching opportunity, and then saying like, well, that they probably should have. I mean, I would have expected them to probably know this already, but
fact-based response.
Yeah, so you're definitely trying to just show some present facts, show some receipts instead of like your opinion, because I don't know, I don't early on in my career I gave some feedback, and it wound up coming back and that person wanted to know more about what I shared. Even though I didn't share it to them, right? So, like, word gets around, right?
They heard that you said something.
Yeah, and it was in one of these opportunities to share feedback, and so it wasn't just me. A lot of people shared feedback. I can't remember if it was one of those 360. You guys familiar with those, like 360? Feedback requests that so I think it was maybe one of those where a lot of people provided feedback and somehow they knew it came from me, and I was far less opinionated at that point in my career too, which I guess tells you something.
Well, you shouldn't have put Adam says in front of each of your responses and let them copy and paste it that way.
Yeah.
Rusty, you give feedback?
So at one point in my past, I was a manager of a software development team.
Oof.
And so I went through management training, and giving and receiving feedback is a big part of it. Right? There's all of these strategies that are helpful in communicating your ideas and thoughts in a way that with proper context so they understand what it is. So I used to give feedback a lot, and most of it was positive. And it was like positive reinforcement. Sometimes you have to give the negative feedback, but you always want to try to be constructive. And as a consultant, I give a lot less feedback because I haven't found myself in a position where I feel like I can give the feedback in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It feels different. The relationships are different. The team dynamics are different. And I have been asked, like in a formal, so-and-so's yearly reviews coming up. Can you give just a quick synopsis on what you think? And I have filled those out.
Sure.
But the direct, I used to actually ask people like, hey, can I give you some feedback? And you give them the opportunity to say yes or no. And nobody's ever said no to me before. And so then they say, yeah, sure, I'd love some feedback. And then, you deliver the feedback, hopefully with the proper context so that they understand, what it is, whether it's positive feedback or constructive. And then, like I said, I used to a lot of positive, and I would give positive feedback out. So people were kind of conditioned to get the positive feedback. And then when you give them the constructive feedback, they're more receptive to it. And it's a cultural thing. You almost got to kind of build it up. And because of my relationship coming into these teams as a software engineer, I just haven't found a position yet where I feel comfortable in trying to cultivate that type of culture. So someday I hope to get back into that, because I think giving and receiving feedback makes us all better. And
right.
But the cultural and most of the companies I've been at, the culture is people are not ready to receive negative feedback if you're not their boss. It's kind of like a one way. And it seems also like we've been conditioned, it's either 6-month reviews or yearly reviews, and that's when you get your feedback, which is the last learning lab meeting that we had was on teamwork, and part of that was giving and receiving feedback.
Right.
And we had some people join there that were talking about having a constant loop, asking for feedback. Always be proactive, look for the feedback, and then when you receive it, try to see if you can apply it as quickly as possible so that you can get better and do things. But yeah, I guess I'd be curious to hear what other people's experiences are, because the feedback, I don't feel like I'm in a position to do that as often anymore.
A lot of times with younger, oh, go ahead, Chad.
Well, no, I mean, I think it depends on my role, right? Like I've been a lead on this project for 5.5 years now. Yeah, forever. And I think, I mean, if I was just brought in somewhere as an individual contributor, I might say a couple of things, but as a lead, you kind of, I feel like I have a responsibility to be more active in, especially junior developers, right? Like their growth, right? And that's like Rusty's saying, right? That is not something you do once a year or every 6 months. That's, PRs are a great little micro feedback loop that you can get involved in. But the current client, I mean, I've been working with kids on my team that are, this is their first career or the first job in IT, right? Like this is their first job in their career. And the feedback that I give them is very, very different than some feedback I'd give like another consultant on their project. For in those cases, like I feel very responsible, not just for like making sure they're delivering quality software and avoiding like mistakes and all those other things, because they don't have a backlog yet of best practices, worst practices, right? It's all been academic.
Whatever Chad says.
Yeah, right. But also, like in those situations, and in any situation really, like I try to influence the culture of the team and whatever organization I'm a part of, right? So in our job as consultants, we participate in the client's culture, and then we have our own internal culture. And I try to lead by example in both cases. Like this is the kind of company that I want to be at on this side and this side.
Right.
And I've had some success, and every once in a while you get somebody that's not on board with the show, and that's fine too, right? So.
Yeah, I've tended, like the junior developers often need a little bit more guidance in the business and how to work in a company, and like, hey, when you don't go on the attack right away necessarily, or give feedback a little bit differently than you're currently giving it. It's we're not ABCD grading here. We're all working together towards a good product. And Yeah, it's challenging. One thing I do miss, last time I worked in an office with junior folks that, one fresh out of college, is you could go talk to them. You could see what they're doing. You'd see their day-to-day operation, and you'd be able to be like, "Oh, looks like you're bored. Do you want to take a look at this?" Or, "Hey, do you want to team up on this feature or something like that?" And try to help them that way, and kind of give that kind of thing. And it's a little harder to do in the disconnected world that we have right now.
I can give one quick thing that I mean, we work remotely at least half the time now.
Hmm.
It's trending more in person, but I had a fellow, I don't think he would be upset at me for mentioning this. I'm not going to mention him by name, but he joined Teams calls, and I like cameras on, right? Like I'm like Adam and Rusty. I always try to keep it on. Well, this fella, first corporate gig, would join cameras on. He lives with his parents in the bedroom that he grew up in, and like the background is, like here's my Pokemon posters and here's this, and I'm like, you might want to like just think about the image that you're presenting to everybody here, because we're on calls and with some fairly like important folks, and I say like, or if you're happy with what you're throwing out there, like stick with it, man. Like I'm not going to judge you on the Pokemon or anything else, but when you joined a Teams call at 7 a.m. when you were sound asleep at 6:58 a.m.
Yeah, bedhead and pajamas.
Yeah, we can
Not
probably
good.
show a better face to the world. And if you want this to be a long-term thing, like, people's opinions about you calcify early on. And so, 5-10 years down the road,
Right.
you're still going to be Pokemon Boy.
Well,
They'll
and
give you a
and
nickname.
what you say, Chad, is like is funny because like yeah, it's going to be Pokemon Boy, but he's also going to be known as the kid that didn't get up, 5 minutes early and comb his hair or whatever. And yes, old codgers like me still think that you should, you know, throw a hat on or be presentable or both,
Yeah.
right? And if you're not willing, if it looks like you just rolled out of bed, maybe you did. Or if it looks like you slept in your car in the parking lot before you came in the office, we're going to get a little concerned about your health and well-being. So,
Yeah, I noticed that when you go to work at different industries, it's different. Cultures are different, and like government. When you go work for the government, you don't want to come in hot, thinking you're all that,
right.
because then you get a nickname. And talking about your resume all the time. Well, I used to work for, Fortune 500 company, and then you get a nickname, Fortune 500 or something like that. At least that's the way it was when I worked at the county. It was if you came in and you put on airs and acted like you're all that, then you got a nickname, and it wasn't very flattering. Um, I watched them kick a team out because they came in and had the expert, professional, super hyper expert, and we're going to come in and we're going to, you're going to listen to everything we say. And they were ignoring project people on the project team and things like that. And it was, I watched it happen, and they were gone in like a week.
Hmm.
They just did not, they weren't likable, and they were a problem. So learning from other people's mistakes is a good thing. Um, Remembering who you work for and knowing who is the decision maker. I think, Rusty, you pointed that out in your notes. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So I mean, sometimes you'll come onto a team and there's titles, but then you find out that, maybe the person with the title's not the one always making the decisions. Maybe there's other people involved that make some of those decisions and then pass it along, and then it gets, codified by the people with the title. So figuring out where the power dynamic is, who's the ones actually making the decisions, is something that I always try to do early on. So kind of where to go when decisions need to be made. And there's some teams I've been on where there's kind of a void of power where
Mm,
there's nobody, it's like decision by committee, but nobody feels like they have the power to finalize the decision. And those teams are the roughest ones to be on, I think, because when you're sitting there, it's like, well, I can't make this decision. I was brought in as an individual contributor. This isn't my role. One thing that I always try to do is give my opinion on it, try to influence it in the direction that I think is correct for the client. But at the end of the day, it's not my decision. It's handed
right.
off to somebody else. And when you're on the teams where nobody will decide and it just kind of flounders, those ones are the ones that I find the most challenging.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. And I mean, it's certainly a challenge to try to push a decision when everybody says, not right now. We'll decide that in a few weeks. We'll get back to that. We'll come back. We'll circle around to that, and we'll make a decision on what software we're going to develop here in a couple of weeks. But um, my other favorite, and Kyle, you've run into this, where somebody's giving you work direction that maybe should not have been giving you work direction and letting you build something that.
Well, this was, and this brings up a whole nother scenario is, well, being on a project with other consultants. And, I had a project where I had a block of time and the data guy had a block of time. And he was taking work direction from one of the subject matter experts, but it wasn't the main person that was in charge of the project and providing the work direction that we were supposed to follow. And they went down a rabbit hole, and he used up all his hours and he used up half of my hours. And that's one thing that's really tough as a consultant is when you provide a scope of what it's going to take to do what, and then you have to go back and say, I need more time. It's going to take
Right.
longer. But you just have to own up and take your lumps. That's what I found. That's one thing that I didn't have to do as a full-time employee is a lot of estimating.
Right.
And I always had a problem with it because I'm not a prophet and I didn't want to pretend to be. And it was, taking your best guess. And then, I'm always optimistic. It's like, when's this gonna be done? Tomorrow. And then the next day, when's it gonna be done? Tomorrow. And,
Not
the
tomorrow yet.
over promising, is not a great thing. But yeah, that's two things. Like, going down a bad path. Maybe there's a project manager that's steering you in a certain direction that maybe is not, what the customer wants. And, you get kind of those situations are ones you'll run into and have to deal with.
So we've also had times where people have had more than one boss, right? Adam, you ever had? You just have one boss and only have to answer to them, and
Usually,
yeah.
no, one official. But I think being in so most of the work that I've done over the last several years is more project-based work, and so you have your product owner, sometimes a product manager. So you have different layers there, but you also have your hiring manager, so the engineering manager, and like that can introduce this like triangle of like what should you be working on, what in reality the product team is really the team you're on trying to drive whatever visions that you have and working with them, and there's a lot of time that actually does get spent trying to get others to talk connected, making sure that they're all on the same page, so that when you do work on, whatever feature. Everyone understands that is the best of the priorities that we have in front of us. And that's something that early on in my career, I didn't have to do. I took direction a lot. I was coming in, just take direction, work on it, deliver. But I think as the longer I've been a consultant in some of the positions I've been in, that's something I've had to try to learn to navigate. And, it's definitely not something that I thought I would be doing initially, right? Because I just want to write code. But now you have engineer or architecture teams, enterprise architectures having, they're wanting something, or they're influencing decisions, and you have this other team and maybe some enterprise teams, and it becomes a lot. It's not as clear cut as to like what direction should we go. And so, definitely not a single on paper. I have my hiring manager, the one who approves all my timesheets, but in reality, it's much different than that.
Yeah. So Rusty, know who you're working for, and know that if somebody gives you different advice or direction, go talk to them.
Yep. Yeah. That's one of the first things that I try to do when establishing myself on a new team.
Yeah, and that can be hard. I mean, those are some of the harder discussions, right? So-and-so is asking me to do this. Should I be doing that, or should I not be doing that? And who is the person that's going to tell so-and-so that I'm not going to be doing that? Because I don't want it to be me.
Yeah, and one of the other things I never had as an employee, I did the expectations of an employee, I think, are better laid out. So as you have a job role, and the job role has expectations. There's a whole list of things that you're expected to do. But as a consultant, you come in, and like you were saying, Peter, people will ask you to do things.
Right.
And it's like, well, is that in my job role or not? Because at least for me, in the clients that I've had, I don't even see what job role I'm filling, right? They just give me some title, and here you are, you're on a project team, or you're now on this team working on day-to-day work, whatever the case may be. And as an employee, I always had a sheet and expectations. You're going to meet all of these. If you want a promotion, this is what the new role expectations are. So you need to also add these 3 additional things to your daily routine, whatever it is. As a consultant, it feels like you're expected to know it all. But then it's like, well, you have people asking you, and it's like, well, if I help you with this can be 2 hours. Should I be spending those 2 hours doing this? Or is my time better spent on the story that I've been given, that I'm supposed to hit the deadline by, end of sprint? Or, and it does get tricky, especially, your engineering manager, whoever you report to, a lot of the times is not part of the daily day-to-day work. Right. And they're not the ones that you are going to go to with a lot of these things, because sometimes they have multiple teams under them or whatever, and they're a little bit more distant. And then it's just kind of figuring out that balance within the team. What are your expectations? Trying to get feedback. Am I doing a good job? I know, it seems like the only feedback I really have ever received as a consultant is when it's time to renew the
contract.
The contract each time. You get it's for me, I've been fortunate. I worked at places that have liked me and wanted me to come back. So I've had positive feedback, but there is no yearly, annual review or anything like that. It's just you get your contract renewed or you don't. And so, yeah, it's hard. It's trying to find those team dynamics and where you fit and what you should and shouldn't be doing. And it's not as clear as it once was as an employee.
Yeah. Since we're winding down, getting toward the end, you're talking about feedback, when you finish a project and you leave a customer, sometimes it's sad. Sometimes you really enjoyed a place you're working with, and sometimes it's just, like if it's a Friday and no one's there, it's kind of a like, I'll just set my laptop on their desk, I guess, and be done. Sometimes you get a pizza party, but and then sometimes you never hear feedback about the work you did. You're on to another thing, and you hope that it went well. You hope that it was, what they wanted and it's working for them. And then eventually, if you do get feedback and it's, it's good, that's kind of, a nice thing to hear. What do you think when you're finishing up a project and leaving a customer? How does that go for you, Rusty and Adam?
Well, I guess for me, so I'm on my third client. My first two clients ended pretty sad. Both of them were early on and that's rough because on both accounts, the project team was cut, and so it's a bunch of people leaving. And like you were saying, Kyle, there was no pizza party for us. It was put your laptop on the counter on a Friday.
Right.
And you worked with these people, you have relationships with them. You spent years, in some cases, building the relationships, building projects together that you thought one day would see, the light of day. And then you find out that it's all getting canned because they either run out of funding or they're moving to a different project or whatever the case may be. And it's hard. Unfortunately, it's part of the job role, right? Where we need to be flexible, and we need to be able to pick up and go to wherever we're needed next. And I guess that is one thing about being a consultant that I didn't consider,
Right.
because it is hard wrapping up some of these roles when saying goodbye to everybody more often than I used to.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't know, like we go into these clients and we know that our time is limited. I mean, that's kind of the nature of, well, I'll say, really the nature of the gig, right? And out of the last like 3-4 clients, like most of mine have been, or the last 3 to 4 clients have been like pretty decent, minimum, like I'll say a year-ish to 3+ years, right? And you get folks on your team that are like, they're more devastated. I mean, it's sad to leave, right? But like, you're going on, going to the next thing, and you're going to be a new adventure, a new set of challenges. But like to Rusty's, I mean, these relationships, like I've had people like very like sad, like just very sad that you're leaving, and because they know that like part of you being there was helping push the group or push the team, and like they want to keep going. And
Right.
I think COVID was tough because one of my clients, like we ended during COVID, and actually 2 of them, and we had to just show up and put your laptop in the pile, and it was that was, I'll say, unique. And I think maybe as remote remote work continues, I suppose like you'll be shipping laptops back or whatnot. Yep. But early on in my career, my gigs were a little bit shorter oftentimes, but the first longer gig, I mean, we had a whole team that was, we had a get together at the end. We met at a restaurant. Like it was the exact opposite of the just tossing it on, the laptop on the pile.
Right.
And it was fun, right? Because you did spend, I mean, Chad, you said earlier, like, I mean, you're spending a third of your day with these people, and it's great. So I think that's something that I definitely we'll see how things go as this remote work continues, if we'll get back to the pizza parties or whatnot. But
yeah, I was fortunate enough to end on a good note. on my last consulting gig with a big happy hour that, we shut the bar down, and it was a blast. I'm very sad,
Nice.
very sad to go.
Yeah.
Looks like we're out of time. So I think we can wrap it up. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here, Rusty and Adam. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chad and Peter. And I think
Can I get
with
one
that,
final shout out here?
absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So for the Learning Lab, SDG's got a ton of great communities. What we're doing here, it's Adam and I, but also Jeremy and Patrick. So there's 4 of us that are hosting the Learning Lab. We're coming up on our next journey is going to be, we talked a lot about teams, remote teams, and this is going to be like a remote team specific, how to handle meetings, things like that. So we're going to have
Nice.
that course that's going to be offered. So, keep your eyes on the Slack channel for that. And then we're probably going to also do another course that's going to be more about Copilot and using Copilot in your daily work. So just wanted to shout out the one last time for the Learning Lab. And thanks for having us on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
thanks so much.
I'm going to do the Copilot one. I'll be there.
Cool.
All right.
Nice.
With that, I think we can say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Bye. Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.